Hello, I'm happy to welcome you all to Ethics in Tech Celebrates Human Rights Day. December 10 was chosen as the date to honor the adoption and proclamation on this day in 1948 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Tonight, we discuss human rights, or the lack thereof, including military recruitment via online gaming platforms and autonomous weapon systems. As always, our program will end with music and comedy. I'm pleased to introduce my friend and our host for this evening, Vahid Razavi. A technology veteran, Vahid founded the cloud computing company BizCloud and has advised and worked in senior management roles in Silicon Valley. He's the author of 2 books, The Age of Nepotism and Ethics in Tech and the Lack Thereof, and is a lifelong activist and humanitarian. Vahid, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Janet. It's been a pleasure to know you for so many years since San Francisco Occupy and SF49, SF 99% coalition. So it's you've always a person that I admire in terms of your activism, and you're outspoken in the community. And thank you for being a part of Ethics in Tech as an advisor. Tonight, I want to start off on maybe a little somber note. I receive emails from people on occasion, and one of them, or a few of them recently, were like, why can't you focus more on comedy? You know, ethics and technology, we're not a comedy club, we're not a musical, we're not here to just entertain people. We're here to entertain, educate, inform, and hopefully to get you to act and get engaged with these organizations that you're going to hear from tonight. You know, there's so much that we can be doing as a community, and our strength is built in our diversity, where we come from, our various faiths, denominations, or lack thereof. Regardless of it, it's getting together and uniting and realizing there's some things that are fundamentally wrong in this world. You know, I was thinking about all the reasons I should be celebrating Human Rights Day, but I can't celebrate Human Rights Day when journalists' rights are being violated. They're making the next Khashoggi out of Julian Assange by trying to put him up to 175-year prison sentence. I can't celebrate Human Rights Day when I see millions of Yemenis die of a starvation because we won't end the wars in the Middle East. I can't see, you know, a celebration when I see all these Afghan refugees and Afghanis in Afghanistan starving in need of food after they were supposedly liberated by American generals. You know, it's amazing. The people that are the generals that waged these wars, that caused all this harm in the world, they get the billions and billions of dollars in funding. And the people that spoke against these wars, the people that stood against these actions, the Julians Assanges of the world, the Chelsea Mannings of the world, continue to get prosecuted and persecuted. You know, that is just wrong. So tonight, it's with a heavy heart that we have this event. Yes, it ends in comedy. Yes, it ends in music. But I hope that the message from the people that are speaking tonight resonates with you, and that deep in your heart you find empathy, kindness, and love towards what we could create together for a better tomorrow in the tech world. You know, there's so much that can be done. Tonight's event is sponsored by Stop Killer Robots campaign. They're doing some amazing work, and Brett Wilkins is going to be talking about that later on this evening. As I said, Janet is going to be introducing our various speakers, but Campaign to Stop Killer Robots has been a great contributor to ethics and tech, and we're proud of being a part of that campaign. We're also proud to have a speaker from Veterans for Peace to talk about online gaming and what it takes to recruit young kids into the military these days. After all, they can't go on campus. The campuses are closed, but it will be interesting to hear from them as to how the military recruits the young. Finally, we will be talking with our friends at EFF, both EFF Austin as well as Matthew from EFF in San Francisco, in regards to various issues that concern them. Um, Reverend Dorsey Blake, as always, is going to be kicking it off for us. And the reason for that is, regardless of your faith, a good prayer still can help us in times of need. And remember, there is always a silver lining. There's always hope. There's always future generations. We just got to make sure we give them a foundation that they can build on, and they can do some good. So with that said, I'm going to pass it to you, Janet. Hopefully I didn't go over my time.
Thank you, Vahid. That was beautiful. I'm going to introduce our speakers for tonight. We have a distinguished lineup. And to give a bit more background, following on what Vahid said, our first speaker will be Reverend Dr. Dorsey Blake. He is the presiding minister of the Church for the Fellowship of All Peoples in San Francisco. He also currently serves as faculty associate of leadership and social transformation at the Pacific School of Religion. Chris Velasquez is the digital organizer for Veterans for Peace and the lead organizer for VFP's Gamers for Peace initiative. Chris is a Marine Corps veteran with combat deployments to Fallujah, Iraq, and Helmand Province, Afghanistan. Chris is a lifelong gamer committed to using digital gaming and hobby spaces to engage in anti-war and social justice activism while combating the predatory recruiting practices of the military. Brett Wilkins is a San Francisco-based independent writer and activist whose work focuses on issues of war and peace and human rights. His articles have recently appeared in publications including Asia Times, the Jakarta Post, Common Dreams, Counterpunch, Antiwar.com, and others. Brett is a member of Collective 20 and is editor-at-large for U.S. News, a Toronto-based digital journal. Like me, Brett is a board member of Ethics in Tech. Kevin Welch is the president of EFF Austin, a digital civil rights organization. He leads the push to educate the public and politicians about important legal and cultural issues confronting society in emerging technological spaces. He has spoken at various venues on these topics, including at South by Southwest and to State Department international delegations. Dr. Matthew Gorilia is an activist and historian researching state power, race, and how governments use technology. He is a policy analyst at EFF and an affiliated scholar at UC Hastings School of Law. His bylines have appeared in NBC News, The Washington Post, Slate, and Vice. And now let's listen to Reverend Dr. Blake.
Thank you so much, Janet. And what a privilege it is to be here with this extraordinary group of presenters. I'm feeling very honored to be asked to be part of this great occasion and to be part of the work of Ethics in Tech, founded by our member, church member, Vahid Razavi. April 1945, delegates from 50 countries, inspired by a vision of creating an international organization that would denounce war and promote peace, met in San Francisco, trusting that this vision would bear fruit. The world had just experienced the end of World War II and the 70 to 85 million people who perished as a result. The goal of the United Nations Conference on International Organization was to fashion an international body to promote peace and prevent future wars. The ideals of the organization were stated in the preamble to its proposed charter. We, the peoples of the United Nations, are determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind. The charter of the new United Nations organization went into effect on October 24th, 1945, a date that is celebrated each year as United Nations Day. The creation of the UN was a commitment to find another way forward, a way of cooperation, a way that recognized the interrelationships of the nations of the world, a way to bury the barbarism of war. 1945 was 1 year after the founding of the church where I serve as presiding minister and where Vahid Razavi is a cherished member. The Church for the Fellowship of All Peoples. Its founding principle was that of bringing people together from diverse stations in life, racial, national, creedal, believing that times of togetherness, of deep spiritual engagement over a significant time period would result in a sense of common ground, community, that would undermine the divisiveness, the barriers, the othering that cause fear, antagonism, and hatred. Mrs. Sue Bailey Thurman, a charter member of the church, was actually an unofficial delegate to the founding of the United Nations. This effort to embody among the nations of the world what had been embodied in Fellowship Church was a gift beyond measure to the mentality of inevitable war, or war as an answer to conflict. 3 years later, with the extraordinary leadership of legendary Eleanor Roosevelt, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights became a living being. This document, with its 30 articles, projected a path away from the quagmire of killing millions of people in this evil ritual of sanctioned murder. The Declaration has inspired the establishment of other human rights documents around the world. In the articles, the colonized were equal and had the same rights as the colonizers, thereby undercutting these oppressive designations. Surely this is prerequisite for promoting and protecting peace and for honoring global interdependence. The Declaration was more than a treaty, for it promoted the aspiration to live as sisters and brothers, sharing the resources and living in harmony so that none need be afraid. They agreed with G. Lowes Dixon in a book published in 1923 entitled War, Its Nature, Cause, and Cure. And in that he said that if mankind does not end war, war will end mankind. Do you think you have an idea where JFK might have gotten his quote? Dixon also said that the remedy to war is a change in policy. He said all states in all their wars have always had a double object: On the one hand, to keep what they have got, on the other, to take more. The aspiration to live as sisters and brothers is a tall order for us in the United States. For we were formed by exploiting others, other indigenous communities, Africans and their descendants, women, the poor. While our founders spoke and wrote beautiful rhetoric, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all people are created equal. But that has never been the reality. The nation has been constantly at war and preparing for war presently. What other reason can one give for the awarding of the Pentagon even more billions than President Biden had requested, which was more than President Trump's last Pentagon budget? I thought we had ended the war in Afghanistan. War games are upon us. We see them every day on electronic devices, the slaughters, the good guys, always employing violence in order to achieve their object. This is just a small part of the war, but obviously, but in some ways as deadly. What I might call the tech war in its extraction from us of data, mined, refined, and used to satiate the greed of the owners of the various platforms that control our lives, and to which we are often willing to give our allegiance. Perhaps I should not call it war. Perhaps colonization is better. But this is our dilemma that stretches even beyond physical war into the tech world. Those minority of people who own so much of our economy, even more than those founding fathers, who continue to take more, to extract more from communities and individuals without adequate compensation, if compensation at all. It is not, however, technology that is the problem. Technology has been a blessing in many ways for our congregation, for my teaching, for my shopping. With the prohibition of worship service at the outbreak of COVID-19, our church turned to Zoom, which has provided an extraordinary platform for checking in with each other. A website facelift has resulted in approximately 150% increase in our mailing list. Yet my seminary class and religious class on leadership was Zoom-bombarded with pornography. I seemingly had no control over being bombarded with information I did not request, communications from unknown and unwanted sources, attempted fraud and hacking of emails. Of more concern, however, is the impact on our young people in so many areas: education, building social skills and relationships, often circumscribing their worldview, as well as sometimes expanding it. My concern in they're being recruited for the military, the very issue that the United Nations and its Universal Declaration of Human Rights were dedicated to ending. The false information piped into their electronics, false promises, false guarantees perpetuate rather than curb the thirst for war. But how do we employ ethics to communication technologies like social media? What behavior is required? What measures or policies need to be in place to prevent or at least manage fake news and the invasion of privacy? Is there a license or at least a pledge that the creators and controllers of the social platforms could be required to sign, stating that the information they accumulate will not be used to harm or exploit? Is there a way to assure that the technology which they control will be used exclusively to promote the common good, promote justice, promote compassion, to level the field so that the excluded can be included, not as mere consumers, but as employers and creators. I feel compelled to raise the alarm, just as Dixon warned, that if mankind does not end war, war will end mankind. If we, the people, do not get a better grip on technology and cannot bring pervasive ethical guards and guarantees, we could very well perish. We have the technology to change the brain and behavior and determine when people die. We have the power to destroy our ecological habitat. What is our will and how will we intervene? The beloved community of love, peace, and justice that Martin Luther King envisioned is still possible. And we still have the choice of chaos or community. I would like to substitute the word it for the original word I in this Bodhisattva prayer for humanity. It embodies for me a poetic understanding of ethics and technology. May it be a guard for those who need protection, a guide for those on the path, a boat, a raft, a bridge for those who wish to cross the flood. May it be a lamp in the darkness, a resting place for the weary, a healing medicine for all who are sick, a vase of plenty, a tree of miracles, and for the boundless multitude of living beings, may it bring sustenance and awakening, enduring like the earth and sky, until all beings are free from sorrow and all are awakened.
Amen. Thank you so much, Reverend Blake.
Thank you.
Yep. I always wonder on the return on investment when it comes to war. People talk about return on investment when it comes to business, but return on investment when it comes to war. How much money have we spent over the years
Yes.
in invading these countries, in waging these wars, and being lied to by generals and intelligence agencies that weren't so intelligent? And now we're paying the price. You know, we have an economy that's based on war.
Exactly.
Creating weapons of war, you know. With all the needs in our society, this is what we'd rather focus on. So it's unfortunate. Janet?
Next, I'll call on Chris Velasquez to talk about what Gamers for Peace is doing. Thanks, Chris.
Hello. And thank you for inviting me to share this platform with you. It's a real privilege to be here speaking to you all about how and why the military is using video games and gaming adjacent spaces to target younger and younger children in their recruitment tactics. Before I was a combat veteran, I was a gamer. I remember my grandmother letting me borrow her original Nintendo, which carried over to Sega versus Nintendo debates, and then years later turned into Warcraft 2 and Unreal Tournament. So when I deployed to Fallujah, Iraq in 2006 with an Xbox 360 and a stack of games stuffed in the bottom of a sea bag, not a single person who knew me was surprised. It's my experiences in Fallujah, Iraq, and later in Helmand Province, Afghanistan that bring me here. It's why, as both a gamer and a vet with regrets, it's important to me to actively work to keep the military out of gaming spaces. To start, I'd like to provide some context for why veterans, gamers, and allies find an initiative like Gamers for Peace so important to truth in recruitment in gaming adjacent spaces. First, I should plainly state the purpose of the truth in recruitment, also known as counter recruitment, is to highlight the disadvantages and very real costs of military service that recruiters minimize or even omit altogether when talking to young people about enlisting. The diverse veteran experience is a spectrum rarely captured in its entirety in media portrayals. GFP is made up of veterans, gamers, and allies across that spectrum, sharing their stories so that others may not experience the traumas of warfare. The goal of Gamers for Peace is to provide truth and recruitment services to college and high school aged individuals susceptible to the economic draft and predatory recruiting practices of the U.S. military, while promoting nonviolent solutions to the current state of affairs, both for the youth themselves and the communities they live in. Traditionally, Veterans for Peace and other organizations have done this direct action work by having veterans visit high schools and talk openly to teenagers about their military service. But military recruiting has started to change in 2018 when the Army failed to meet the recruiting goal for the first time in 13 years. The Army and Navy moved away from school visits, TV ads, and other traditional methods of recruiting and put massive amounts of advertising money and other resources online because they recognized that their target audience was spending the majority of their time in online spaces. The Navy alone budgeted $33 million for internet advertising in 2020, which is a whopping 97% of their advertising budget. But one tactic that has had one of the biggest impacts on military recruitment numbers was the military's infiltration of video gaming, streaming, and organized esports. According to the Entertainment Software Association, the ESA, in 2020, there were an estimated 214.4 million video game players in the United States, with 75% of those American households possessing at least one video game device. Shooter games were the third most popular genre. Within the gaming market, military or war-themed FPS is first-person shooters, is a major genre, accounting for 26.9% of all games sold in the US in 2018. Moreover, it is estimated that 80% of male gamers aged between 18 to 34 and 61% of men aged 35 to 54 play FPS games on a regular basis. Twitch, one of the largest and fastest growing live streaming and gaming adjacent platforms, averages 3 million concurrent views with half a billion hours of content consumed. Of those views, 65% are male identified individuals, 41% are aged 16 to 24, and 73% are aged between 16 and 34. The military recognized this and launched their own esports teams and tournaments, Twitch channels, and other social media accounts specifically for advertising and streaming on Twitch netted the Army 13,000 new recruiting leads in the first 6 months of 2020 alone, per YouTuber's Second Thoughts amazing YouTube video. And recruitment efforts through these pipelines will continue to be successful until media consumption habits change. There's another layer to the military's urgency in changing recruiting tactics, and that's the availability of potential new enlistees. There's a large segment of the youth population that is not eligible for military service due to factors like being severely overweight, mental health issues, and other physical health issues. The remaining percentage of the military has to recruit from a very small, only 17% of youth are willing and able to enlist. The military knows this is a major issue. They may not be able to address the mental and physical issues preventing enlistment, but they can target the willingness to serve aspect of the recruiting problem by targeting children. Trump's Assistant Secretary of the Army for Manpower and Reserve Affairs, Dr. E. Casey Wardinsky, said in 2019 Business Insider interview, "We have to confront this question of, will we wait until they're 17 or will we start talking to them at the age of 12, 13, 14, 15, when they form the set of things they are thinking about doing with their life? And particularly if their parents or other close family members never served, the option either may not occur to them or could be completely written off. If we wait until they're 17 or 18, we will not be their first impression," Wardinsky said. "Others will have made that for us." To address this, the military's current recruiting tactics banks on the phenomenon of parasocial relationships. Parasocial relationships are when an individual forms a strong emotional bond with someone who literally does not know they exist. Think people who feel extremely close to celebrities, pop stars, and now YouTubers and Twitch streamers. The military is grooming children for enlistment by exploiting the human phenomenon of parasocial relationships through Twitch. Each branch essentially identifies their most charismatic enlisted members, has them develop on-screen personas to connect with viewers, and puts them on Twitch for hours every day where they have unrestricted access to children. They, of course, play games that are targeted at the current recruiting age, like Call of Duty, League of Legends, World of Tanks, but they also stream themselves playing games like Planet Zoo, Minecraft, and Fortnite, which are absolutely geared towards a much younger audience. Children are primed to be influenced by parasocial relationships due to the media climate they are growing up in. The quantity of content and level of interaction children can have with online personalities through chat and social media is greater than ever before. You only have to be 13 to have an account on Twitch and most other social media locations. And we know plenty of 10, 11, 12-year-olds who are lying about their age or get permission from parents. Kids watch these esports military personnel and see themselves in them, see themselves playing alongside them, never realizing the chances of them playing esports for the military as a full-time job is far, far less than the chance of them suffering trauma, injury, military sexual assault, or other serious and life-altering consequences of military service. Esports, the modern iteration of it, isn't the first time the military has dipped into video game industry territory. Military entertainment complex, which is the U.S. military's influence, control, and in some cases creation of content found in movies, TV shows, and other media, has a long-standing relationship with video games, dating back to the days even before, back to the days of Doom. Some of you may remember the Marine mod, which has a mod developed for training United States Marines, later was released to the public. More currently, you might be familiar with America's Army and its current iteration, America's Army's Proving Grounds. Per Dr. Richard Goffrey's recent article, The Politics of Consuming War, Video Games, the Military Entertainment Complex, and the Spectacle of Violence, the stated aim of the game is to, quote, educate the American people about the U.S. Army and its career opportunities, high-tech involvement, values, and teamwork. According to Nichols, the original idea of the game came about in the late 1990s when the U.S. Army began missing recruitment targets, recognizing that many of the youngest recruits were spending much more of their time playing video games and citing FPSs in particular as one of their inspirations for enlisting. The game was created to intentionally target this demographic and to stimulate interest in a military career through exposure to this form of warplay. As such, the game is very closely tied to the ethos, practices, and activities of the U.S. Army. Through a spectacular example of co-branding, the Army promotes the game and the game promotes the Army, even to the point of inserting recruitment adverts during the loading screen whilst players wait to join a mission. There's further tie-in for targeting gamers, and that ties into the future of warfare with the push towards over-the-horizon capabilities. There's evidence to support that gamers have an existing skill set that provides an advantage in the future of drone warfare. This is especially attractive as what over-the-horizon warfare means is a new term to the military. It can be defined as any military capability which can strike terrorists and target without American boots on the ground, or very few if needed. Drones and airstrikes are the current iteration. In conclusion, I know I'm running very short on time, and I could talk all day about the military's recruitment efforts in gaming spaces and the reasons why and how it benefits them in the current state of warfare and the future state of warfare. So I have many reasons to do counter recruitment. As a gamer, I don't want to see our hobby used to promote anything other than fun and community. As a veteran, I don't want to see another generation of veterans. I don't want to see more children pulled into a system that leads to 22 individuals taking their life each day. I don't want to see more families living in fear of sunny, clear skied days. So what is the GFP offering to someone avoiding being recruited by the military or in need of an alternative? First, community, with people discussing the reasons why military service is not a good choice as it's made out to be. And this is talking about our firsthand experiences regarding the violence, the moral injury, PTSD, the oppression of people, and the impact on the climate crisis, amongst many, many others, while promoting a culture of peace and anti-militarism. Second, we want to offer options to avoid the economic draft, scholarships, internships, and mentorship assistance. Third, reward and empowerment for their hobby and pursuit of positive change through gaming. Gaming has many positive interactions and applications, and we would like to foster that. And fourth and finally, we offer a platform for them to organize to promote peace within their own communities and find political solutions within inclusive gaming-oriented spaces and community. Thank you for having me speak today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Chris. Vahid, did you wish to add
Chris, I
anything?
really appreciate what you shared. Because the games have changed, and the games that I was playing, and they're no longer playing Tetris.
Tetris is still pretty popular. You can't go wrong with it.
Okay. Tells you what I know when it comes to computer gaming. I never found the time that I could spend doing it. But the games these days, they seem pretty scary. And considering, the influence that you get from an army recruiter to pursue a career in military, it makes it even scarier because building on kids' fear of the fact that they need leadership in their lives and that, they need an out from the socioeconomic conditions that they're raised in. And those are all used to attract the next generation of soldiers. I always think that an age for being in the military should be 25, let them go out, get drunk, have it fun at the bars before they ever decide to go and kill somebody. Good luck with recruiting people at that age. But that's my view. I'm going to pass it back to you, Janet. Who's up next?
Okay, so yeah, I'd say the ideal recruiting age would be 65. But anyway, I'm going to pass it on now to Brett Wilkins, a really excellent journalist, writer, and as I mentioned before, my fellow advisory board member for ethics and tech. Please go ahead, Brett.
Thank you, Janet. That was really interesting, Chris. Someone who played, a lot of video games from, I guess, the Atari 2600 and the TRS-80 up through the early 2000s, maybe even the 2010s. Man, if I had $1 for every hour I spent playing. But anyway, that's another story. Good evening, everyone. Guests, hosts, panelists, comedians. A special shout out to all of you who've attended our previous ethics and tech events. It's good to have you back. My name is Brett Wilkins, and I'm a staff writer at Common Dreams. I'm also communications director of the San Francisco Berniecrats and our Revolution affiliate. And last but not least, I'm a board member here at Ethics and Tech, a member of the Stop Killer Robots Coalition. Happy Human Rights Day. This is the day that the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which I consider to be a superior document to the United States Constitution, because it enshrines human equality and actual meaningful rights, including an adequate living standard, food, clothing, housing, healthcare, education, and so much more, not absurd anachronisms like so-called rights to bear arms. But I digress. Before I talk about killer robots, I'd also like to take a moment to remember the nearly 1,000 men, women, and children in El Salvador who were murdered on December 10th, 11th, and 12th, 1981, 40 years ago in El Mozote and 8 surrounding villages by an elite army battalion created, trained, and armed by the United States by the Carter and Reagan administrations at the notorious School of the Americas, also known as the School of Assassins and School of Coups because it produced so many of both. It was the worst massacre in modern Latin American history, and it was paid for by American taxpayer dollars in the name of promoting democracy and a right-wing dictatorship nonetheless. El Mozote and countless lesser massacres and other crimes committed by the US and US-backed dictatorships around the world stand in stark contrast to this country's professed mission of promoting human rights and exposes the truly hypocritical face of US imperialism. Which brings us to killer robots, the terrifying future tools of imperial warfare. And it's a future that's closer at hand than you might think. First, let's define what we mean by killer robots. We're not talking about drones, we're talking about fully autonomous weapon systems, lethal weapon systems, which would be able to select and engage targets without meaningful human control. Precursors to these weapons, such as armed drones, are being developed and deployed by nations including China, Israel, South Korea, Russia, the United Kingdom, and of course, the United States. And like I said, we are closer to the reality of killer robots than you might think. Last year, I asked Nobel Peace Laureate Mary Wareham, she's an Ethics and Tech panel alumnus, who's from New Zealand, a country you're going to be hearing more about. And she's the advocacy director at Human Rights Watch's Arms Division and formerly of the Coalition to Stop Killer Robots. I asked her how close are countries to actually fielding fully operative lethal autonomous weapon systems. She said that we were on the borderline of fielding killer robots then, that was last year, and we've only gotten closer since. Systems including South Korea's Samsung SGR A1 Sentry robot, which is deployed along the North Korean border, the IAA Harap and Harpy loitering munitions that Israel has developed and is selling to Azerbaijan and other countries, and Azerbaijan just had a war with Armenia. The long-range anti-ship missiles that Lockheed Martin has been developing in the US, BAE Systems Tyrannus autonomous fighter aircraft under development in the UK and being tested in Australia, and the drone swarms that China, the US, and other countries have been investing in underscore just how close we are to killer robots becoming the new normal of 21st century warfare. Yet, the United States has signaled that it will not support any legally binding treaty banning lethal autonomous weapons, while dozens of other countries, most recently New Zealand, have expressed support for a global ban on the use of autonomous weapon systems. The US has been a major obstacle to progress for years. Just last week, the Biden administration reiterated US opposition to prohibiting killer robots through any kind of legally binding instrument. Instead, the United States prefers a more nebulous and non-committal voluntary code of conduct. Shockingly, a US government advisory panel led by former Google CEO Eric Schmidt told Congress recently that it is, quote, a moral imperative, unquote, to at least explore the development of lethal autonomous weapons. Why? Well, in a similarly perverse logic to that which fueled the nuclear arms race of the last century, the reasoning is if we don't do it, someone more evil will do it. Although I don't know what's more evil than a country that's killed more foreign civilians since the end of World War II than the United States. I don't know what they have in mind by that. But anyway, Mary Wareham said that this commission's, quote, focus on the need to compete with similar investments made by China and Russia only serves to encourage arms races, unquote. Now let's compare and contrast that stance of the United States with the one of New Zealand, a country already known in anti-war circles for being a nuclear-free zone. Phil Twyford, New Zealand's Minister of Disarmament and Arms Control, man, imagine such a thing. He said that, quote, this is an issue with significant implications for global peace and security, and I'm optimistic that New Zealand, alongside the international community, is well placed to push for action, unquote. Well, one of the major things about stopping killer robots is ensuring meaningful human control, which means understanding the technologies that we use, understanding where we're using them, and being fully engaged with the consequences of our actions. Life and death decisions should not be delegated to a machine. It's time for new international laws to regulate these technologies. Well, Stop Killer Robots is an international coalition of more than 165 groups in 65 countries. Some of them are single activists. Some of them are nonprofit organizations like us, Ethics in Tech, that people can volunteer with, such as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, churches, church groups like Pax Christi. And well, the coalition has launched a site for children and youth too who are interested in learning more about killer robots. In the United States and other nations, there needs to be political pressure and engagement just to explain why this should be an issue of concern for elected officials. Of course, we can't do all of that outreach at Capitol Hill that we need to do, and we're outnumbered by defense lobbyists, something like 3-1, I think. We have to reach our leaders through face-to-face contacts and correspondence, but also through the media, and having well-known activists like Noam Chomsky and the ladies at Copink, hey Janet, that really helps too. There's also a major role that tech workers of conscience can play in stopping killer robots. We've seen employees of companies like Amazon, Google, Palantir, Salesforce, and others stand up against participation in the military-industrial complex or ICE concentration camps on our southern border. And I anticipate we'll see the same sort of activism in the face of the burgeoning autonomous weapons threat. Well, what can you do right now? You can go to stopkillerrobots.org and sign a petition that's been launched along with Amnesty International to call on government leaders around the world to negotiate new international laws on autonomy and weapon systems to ensure that human control in the use of force and to prohibit machines that target people reduce us to objects, stereotypes, and data points. You can also donate to the campaign. And if you're already working to stop lethal autonomous weapons, you can share your story. You can host workshops. It's all on the website, so check it out. It's stopkillerrobots.org. I thank you for joining us here at Ethics in Tech tonight, and wish you all happy holidays, peace on earth, and human rights for everyone. Keep fighting the good fight. And now back to Vahid.
Thank you so much, Brett. It's always great to see you. I want to say a huge thanks to Brett's work on ethics in tech. A lot of the articles and content that's on the site is managed and put on by Brett, and he does that out of his spare time, and we truly appreciate it. When it comes to issues of politics and his understanding of both US as well as international politics and technology, he's outstanding, and we're lucky to have him as a board member to our organization. So thank you, Brett. I'm going to pass it back to Janet. Where are you, Janet?
Yeah, here I am, Vahid.
Awesome.
So through the magic of Zoom, we will now go to Austin, where Kevin Welch, the president of EFF in Austin, will take it away.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Ethics in Tech. It's an honor to be speaking with all this group of illustrious people here from various different organizations. Yeah, I'm Kevin Welch. I'm with EFF Austin. We are a longstanding Austin-based digital civil liberties organization. Obviously, we have a long history with Electronic Frontier Foundation in San Francisco, who also has a representative here we'll be hearing from shortly. But yeah, we I had Vahid speak at one of our meetups not long ago, and I decided to return the favor at one of his events, and I'm honored to be here. So Vahid asked me if I could speak a little bit about particularly some of the digital civil liberties issues around having autonomous weapon systems and things like facial recognition, specifically more related to policing concerns. So I actually put together just a slideshow here just to illustrate my points real quick. So I'm going to pop that on real quick. Okay, can everybody see that? Cool. Okay, so I wanted to speak, I've given us a nice little provocative title here, but just my brief talk, I'm calling it Artificial Morality, the Risks of Turning Ethical Decision-Making Over to Machines. So let's see if I can advance this. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay. So in the 21st century, machines are increasingly automating non-routine tasks with moral implications. Notable examples we see of this that, for instance, drones in the Middle East are increasingly deciding who to kill without a human operator intervening to decide if the decision was the right call or not. This is literally already happening in some of the war zones along the Turkish, Syria, and Iraq border. We have facial recognition systems that are deciding who to detain or who to publicly humiliate. And just in general, a movement toward human beings not being the ones involved in the decision-making process, a full trust in the machine learning AI algorithm to get it right. These moves are often justified with this idea that somehow machines are less biased than humans, or maybe even more ethical in some way than humans, that we can get away from all these pesky subjective judgments of human beings if we turn it over to machines. But for those of us who've been in this space and research this and look at these emerging spaces and try to go, well, is there evidence to bear this out? These claims seem to be somewhat suspect, and we have multiple emerging real-world cases that illustrate this. So to take one example that is happening already a lot in America across our cities, the movement of predictive policing. This is a movement that, despite its claims to be a more biased way, a less biased way of doing policing based on more objective crime data, the emerging evidence is that this actually in many ways cements existing bias. So all AI systems get trained on real world data. And the flaws in that real world data get magnified in what the AI starts to believe about the world. So when you train an AI system on existing crime data, it can be tempting to think that it's saying this is where crime happens. That this is right, that this is where crimes will be committed. But the reality is that when you train it on this data, you're actually predicting where policing occurs, which, as we all know, is a biased institution in America, that particularly lower income and communities of color receive heavier policing, even though, as anybody who has ever been to a rich high school party knows, plenty of law breaking happens in rich affluent communities as well. They're just not policed at the same level. So when you train these systems on that data, they're just telling you where policing historically has already happened, giving the illusion of an objectivity about it. Furthermore, these predictive policing systems are often augmented by cameras enabled with facial recognition technology. This technology it has flaws that have been documented a lot in the media, especially the most glaring flaw that has been reported on a lot, which is that the systems are inaccurate in correctly identifying people of color. And this has already led to a real case of a wrongful arrest of Robert Williams in Detroit, where he was misidentified as the perpetrator of a crime by a facial recognition system. And we just see in general that, tying into the theme I already mentioned a bit about, like, that we're more predicting where policing occurs, the existing racial and economic disparities in arrests and sentencing in our country result in machine learning systems trained on this data becoming biased themselves. They're not biased in the sense that there's not anything emotional about it, but because they have learned how the world works from our world, and our world is filled with flawed, biased humans, we don't actually get a world that is less biased, but it is now hidden behind the guise of technological objectivity, that there is some definitive mathematical statement being made, when it is really just that it has crunched thousands of unique scenarios and said, yep, this is how crime has always worked, therefore it must be objectively true and not part of systemic issues in this country. And now another important question to ask in this is, well, just what about machines or AI's capability of understanding ethics in general? Like, is there any evidence that it's not just them studying thousands of examples and regurgitating the patterns they think they've seen? Is there any evidence that AI or machine learning has reached a point where there's actual appreciation for what we would call human understanding of ethics and morality? And at least so far, the evidence is maybe someday, but not yet. A good example that was actually created by an activist group recently to highlight some of the flaws in these current systems was a tool called Ask Delphi, which is a moral AI engine that was trained on real people's common responses to various moral conundrums. It basically tried to teach the AI ethics by creating a bunch of moral questions, asking real people whether they thought this was moral or immoral, and then trying to get the machine to learn what ethics look like from real people's answers. It broadly gets certain things most of us would agree are good or bad. But the truth is, we all know real people are racist, sexist, ableist, and classist. So it turns out Ask Delphi is too. Ask Delphi thinks it's better to be rich than poor. Ask Delphi thinks it's better to be straight than LGBTQ. It has learned these things from the real moral, ethical gaps that real human beings have. And it turns out that the most hilarious part is that Ask Delphi believes that any action, even up to genocide, is moral as long as you assure it that it will make everyone happy. Then it gives you the go-ahead, and it's literally like utilitarianism taken to the ultimate extreme. Well, it makes everyone happy. Who am I to say it's immoral? So there's not a lot of evidence that machines are yet in a place where they are any more capable of offering ethical, moral choices than human beings. And finally, a point I want to touch on is that giving machines the ability to kill on their own really breaks a lot of our current systems of oversight and accountability. Current AI systems built on machine learning, crunching massive data sets, they are incapable of explaining why they make the decisions they do. Like if you ask it, when it gives you an answer and you ask it, well, how did you decide that these two images are of the same person? Or how did you decide this is more likely to predict crime than this? It can't tell you. It just says, I crunched all the data. This is what I believe. So there's no ability to audit the decision-making process. It's literally a black box. And because of this, there is no way to distinguish between a machine making the right call to neutralize a potentially dangerous target or a software bug that made the machine identify an innocent person as a threat. There's no way to audit the decision and ask the machine how it arrived at that. And furthermore, the problem is exacerbated by that most of these current AI learning systems are essentially proprietary software, which means third parties can't even audit the source code to maybe spot flaws in how these algorithms are constructed. And thanks to NDAs between vendors and police departments, non-disclosure agreements, we finally reach a point where we already have very limited ability to hold human law enforcement accountable when, say, they commit police brutality on a subject exercising their First Amendment rights to peaceful assembly and protest. We already have seen that due to various systemic flaws and just intense disagreement in this country about how policing should work, it's already incredibly difficult to hold humans accountable. But I mean, with the NDA, so you don't even know not always which company is supplying the software or which human beings program the software. Even knowing who to sue when an autonomous weapons system makes a mistake and kills an innocent person becomes far more difficult than at least the token accountability we hopefully have with real human beings when they screw up law enforcement operations. So that's a lot of the issues that are facing cities on some of these issues, and a lot of the things that at various digital civil liberties groups like EFF Austin we're watching. And it definitely can be a bit of a depressing fight, to try to get reform on this anyway. But I encourage anybody listening that there are options, and I encourage you to get involved in this movement, which does exist all across the US to try to bring accountability and reform to this stuff. Obviously, the Stop Killer Robots campaign is great, and I'm really appreciative of the work they do, and especially the visibility they've been getting on things like the Late Show with Stephen Colbert recently and other things. Excellent work, and I'm really happy to learn more about their work thanks to this collaboration here. I also want to highlight that EFF is currently running a campaign called About Face that my friend Nash at EFF is in charge of. It is a movement that is trying to spur the banning of facial recognition technology by public entities in cities across America. The campaign has already had success in a number of cities, leading to bans in a number of cities around the country. We in Austin are trying to get traction on hopefully getting our city eventually added to that coalition. And then finally, just I want to highlight that wherever you're listening throughout America, there are all sorts of EFA groups or Electronic Frontier Alliance groups that EFF coordinates with. There's probably one near you. Ethics in Tech is also a member. And I encourage you to get involved in your local community if these issues matter to you, because really concerted citizen pressure telling our elected officials that this technology is not ready to replace human decision making. I mean, not that human decision making is great always on ethics and morality, but this tech isn't any better, and it's certainly not somehow more objective than we are. And it may have its places in our world, but it needs to have oversight and accountability, and humans still need to be involved when there is the question of whether we should take a human life. So once again, thank you so much, Vahid, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And thanks to Electronic Frontier Foundation. I know we were expecting Matthew to be joining us. I don't see him as a attendee.
Oh, okay.
in the list of folks at tonight's event. So we're going to move on for the next segment. If you guys would unmute your connections and put on your videos, we're going to talk about some of the discussions around the topics that Kevin brought and Chris brought. First and foremost, Chris, there is a huge concern of not just what the gamers today are facing, but what the future neuro implants that people are considering putting into, people in 5 to 10 years, what that's going to look like. How would that stimulate kids? The game manufacturers definitely make money from that violence and the excitement that comes from manufacturing the game apps. But ultimately, where do you see this industry headed? It's pretty addictive, and there are millions and millions of users, as you mentioned. So how do you make an impact?
So the wonderful thing about Gamers for Peace is that we are gamers. I'm not like, there's tons of things wrong with the gaming industry as a whole. There's flagrant sexism, misogyny, and bad business practices, and tons of issues, exploitation, and all that. But we are gamers, so we don't want to end gaming for anybody in any way. But what we want is for the military to not have access, and to not, for our platforms, the places that we come for escapism, to enjoy and build community, to not be so steeped in the capability for people to corrupt that healthy, good activity and community building into a pipeline that puts them into an economic draft, where a recruiter has the ability to groom them and then turn around to them and be like, what are you willing to kill for? Is it healthcare right now? Is it an escape from an abusive home? Is it escape from the material conditions that are keeping you in poverty, or like you just don't know what's going on? I have an opportunity for you that's in gaming. And as I was mentioning, like the population that recruiters can actually recruit from is only about 17% or so, smaller. They are still mass media broadcasting. So there is entire populations and segments of these children that are getting pro-military, pro-violent messaging and being put in gaming adjacent spaces like Twitch or Discord for chat conversations, and they build community. And there's opportunists in there that take them into an extremist pipeline that take the violence, the violent wing of United States government, that rhetoric and that propaganda reinforcement and manufactured consent, and get to turn it into a pipeline that takes them into a very dangerous route for all of us. And that's one of the biggest things. And it's not necessarily that, like, studies still are out. There's a lot of still science that goes both ways about the actual impact of the game itself. But we see extremist studies on extremism, violent extremism, and gaming, and the correlation show that it's the community. It's a holistic thing. There's a toxic community that needs to be addressed, and we're trying to fight that.
One of the things that I always think about is how military recruitment is done across the world, in places like Yemen and Afghanistan and Syria and elsewhere, where kids go to a school or a madrasa, and for a loaf of bread and for a roof over their head, they're brainwashed into picking up arms and joining the military and sacrificing their lives. I remember during the Iran-Iraq war, young kids were used during the war for the military, for the missions that they didn't want to do themselves. So I think each country has got a different way of recruiting the youth. And it's really a shame, because we make all this talk about how we want to preserve life and how we want to value the sanctity of life and in our society. And yet the people that are most vulnerable, the people that are the most touched by violence, and the most impressionable are the ones that are used by these military forces to be brainwashed. And, the platform providers, the Twitches of the world, do you think they have a responsibility, Chris, in terms of the platform they provide and monitoring of how kids interact with the military recruiters?
I absolutely do. And there's just this past Monday. Wow, it's been 4 days since then. There was an amazing panel by the UN Council on counterterrorism, and it was focusing on gaming and violent extremism, the link between games and violent extremism, and it got into this conversation a good amount about the onus being on. It's not just an algorithmic approach that we're looking for keywords and things that are expressed. There's a community that is developing around being able to use this and reinforcing a lot of this violent rhetoric. And what that means is that we have to look at the overall behavior of these recruiters, of these behaviors, and the reliance on the parasocial relationship development, and look at how the platforms are monetized. Like Twitch as a platform is completely dedicated as a platform to be parasocial relationship developing in this relationship, because of the amount of interaction that occurs while me as a streamer never actually interacting with the person on the other side, but they're interacting with me, and I get to just freely talk back to chat, and they make that association. And when you're talking to a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old like that, as a trained recruiter who is trained to use predatory practices to groom children over the course of 7 years when they can enlist, 8 years when they can enlist, that's 8 years of time in the most formative, safe places for kids where there aren't adults. Because how many parents have started transition to having TVs or video games raise their children, or have minimal interaction in the communities that these kids are playing? So we have to address the community that is going on inside these spaces, in these gaming adjacent spaces.
Thank you. Brett, do you want to jump in? Do you have any questions for Chris?
No, but like I said, I find this fascinating. I mean, I recall, that they've been doing this for decades now, and it's interesting because when we were kids, they would say things like, you're playing all these video games, it's going to drive you to do violent acts and whatnot. I remember when Grand Theft Auto came out and all, but I was actually a full-grown adult then. But it's actually the other way around. It's them using people that are, enjoying these games to recruit them into the military. So it's a kind of a genius move if you look at it, but it's insidious.
I mean, I don't know what's more insidious. You have autonomous weapons on one hand that, require no human control. And on the other hand, you're going to go recruit a whole bunch of kids and give them guns to go to battle. They're just both hideous in my view. Kevin, one of the things you mentioned was the use of targeting by police in terms of the big data that they collect. A lot of that is done through companies like Ring, the good old monitoring system that everybody trusts for their doorbell, and how much of that data is actually handed over to the police. And, it gets pretty scary, the number of companies that are providing that set of data. I was reading recently that, kids' toys are having multiple cameras installed in them so that you can monitor your kid. I mean, what happened with letting kids grow on their own? Why is this world becoming so that we're always need to be looking behind our back? Do we live in such a fearful world?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's absolutely. I will tell you right now, in America, you go into any neighborhood of a certain level of affluence, you're kind of being watched. I mean, half the doorbells at this point are essentially Ring or something similar. And there's other companies, and people can have legitimate reasons for wanting these systems, and some of the companies aren't as bad as others. I mean, obviously you can homebrew your own system if you want to ensure your data is not being siphoned somewhere, but obviously most people don't do that. But Ring is especially egregious about subverting whatever maybe legitimate security or safety concerns a particular family might have, and basically, yeah, creating a massive data funnel that directly partners with law enforcement. There's actually there's an app that Ring pushes called I believe it's Neighbors, which it's sort of like Nextdoor, except it's basically literally a forum for reporting suspicious people in the neighborhood, which often equals people who don't look rich, and I mean, to be blunt, people who often don't look white, people of color in the neighborhood. And yeah, it's a massive problem where like it's a phenomenon known as instead of surveillance, surveillance, or instead of overveillance, underveillance, to be French with the prefixes there. But it's the idea that we don't necessarily have to have Big Brother watching everything we do all the time. It's just the idea that if you give enough people cameras, you're kind of being watched all the time. And if all the data from all these cameras is getting siphoned into a black box somewhere where they have access to all the camera feeds and we don't have access to any of it, you're creating a massive power disparity there where somebody can be packaging this data up and using it for who knows what.
It's amazing, companies like Amazon that claim that they deliver your milk and honey and bring your groceries and, give me my cat food. They are the ones that are surveilling the most on the general public and the population. They work with organizations like the NSA and the CIAs of the world and various intelligence agencies at the same time that they install Ring on every door and put an Alexa device in every home. So it's a scary amount of control to be giving to one or two or three corporations to have over our data. And it's becoming more and more like that, unfortunately. So yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. Is there anything you want to add, Kevin, or ask each other? I don't want to be a bottleneck here.
Well, I mean, just I'm very impressed with the work that all the other speakers are doing here, and I really appreciate you all highlighting these issues. Yeah, I guess first of all, I'll just say, if you all ever are interested in getting your message out further, EFF Austin's always looking for speakers. We'd love to have any of you. Everything you're doing is in our wheelhouses, and we really support it. And I do appreciate the point that the issue is not like video games making people violent. That has been so thoroughly academically debunked at this point. It's just, it's weaponizing people's real desire to play and pretend in a healthy way and blurring that line. It's like that line isn't blurred for people just from playing the games. It gets blurred when people are trying to say that, like, killing people remotely with a drone is a video game and forgetting that those are real people.
Yeah. Well, with that said, I think it would be a good time to start a little early and hear Mokai and get him to share his music with us. What do you think, Janet?
Let's do it.
All right.
Okay, Mokai, ready to have some music.
Great. Hey, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on gallery view so that I can see everyone. And if you don't mind staying on camera, I know people, when it's not their turn, they like to turn their camera off. Vahid's already gone. But one of the, I don't know how ethical it is to force acoustic musicians to have to play to audiences that are virtual and where they can't get the feedback and the laughter or applause that we musicians so crave. I did want to mention that I just really appreciate all the speakers and all the organizations that are here tonight. This is some really important information, and I'd love to see it get out to a wider audience. Here in San Francisco, I've been involved with some of the activist groups. I saw that someone here is involved with Code Pink. I did a performance with Medea Benjamin in 2004 for the second Gulf War. And we've also been involved, my wife and I have been involved with EFF tangentially. John Gilmore's house has been the location for some parties and gatherings, most recently for the campaign of Shahid Buttar running for Nancy Pelosi's seat, and he was getting a lot of good information out there. And now during this, whole pandemic period, just thinking back to that party right before the election in 2020 when we were all supporting Shahid, and there was a party at John Gilmore's house, and it was probably 100 people crammed into this Victorian in the living rooms, in the hallways, in the kitchen, in the backyard. So anyway, that's just to say that I appreciate all of the activist work you're doing. And let me know if, with a thumbs up or a thumbs down, if you can hear the guitar there. Okay, so I'm going to take this ancient piece of technology known as the guitar, and I'm going to sing a little song about using the ancient form of music called the blues. And I'm going to sing a song about how technology is affecting all of us personally in our personal lives. Whoa, baby, won't you put that cell phone down? Whoa, baby, won't you put that cell phone down? You're staring at it, baby. Don't even notice I'm around. You call that thing a smartphone. To me it don't seem wise. The way you're staring at it, baby, bound to ruin your eyes. I said, whoa, baby, won't you put that cell phone down? You're staring at it, baby. Don't even notice I'm around. Whoa, baby, you used to treat me so nice. Whoa, baby, you used to treat me so nice. But now you only interact with your device. You're texting so much, baby. Gonna give yourself tendinitis. Are we gonna let this technology divide us. I said, whoa, baby, won't you put that cell phone down? You stand at it, baby, don't even notice I'm around. Whoa, baby, won't you put that cell phone down? Whoa, baby, won't you put that cell phone down? You're staring at it, baby, don't even notice I'm in your service area.
I think it's time for a little introduction
Thank
of
you.
our,
Thanks a lot.
of our
So
wonderful guitarist here. So
I put out an album in 2019, and one of the inspirations for the album was this song, and it was the first single off the album. It's called "Mama's Got the Blues," and it's a song about, you know, how in this country so many people are struggling just to get their basic needs met. She's been a working girl since she was a teen. She's been a waitress and a sales girl and everything in between. A couple of decades now, she's got a couple of kids. Well, that's a lot of life. Whether or not you're somebody's wife, oh, mama's got the blues. She's been working all week on her feet, wearing out her shoes. Oh, mama's got the blues. She's got so much to juggle, it's a daily struggle. Ain't it the truth? Ain't it the truth? Her boy came home with his tooth knocked out from a schoolyard fight. Her teenage daughter came home way too late last night. Her boss is riding her, he won't get off of her case. One of these days she's gonna lose it and tell him right to his face. Oh, mama's got the blues. She's been working all week on her feet, wearing out her shoes. I said, oh, mama's got the blues. She's got so much to juggle, it's a daily struggle. Ain't it the truth? Ain't it the truth? mama's when she was younger didn't have a care, hanging with her friends, doing something new with her hair. It's been so long she can't recall the last time she had fun. It's so hard to relax when her working day is done. Oh, mama's got the blues. She's been working all week on her feet, wearing out her shoes. I said, oh, mama's got the blues. She's got so much to juggle, it's a daily struggle. Ain't it the truth? Ain't it the truth? I wonder about a society that don't take care of its own. It's a hard enough job to raise a child all alone. It don't help when they make it so hard to get the basic things you need in such a wealthy country, blinded by greed. Oh, mama's got the blues. She's been working all week on her feet, wearing out her shoes. Oh, mama's got the blues. She's got so much to juggle, it's a daily struggle. Ain't it the truth? Ain't it the truth? Thank you. Thanks a lot. So, my activism has mostly been centered around environmental work. And I came out to California in the 80s, and I got involved with Earth First and went up to Oregon and was involved with some of the campaigns to try to stop logging on public lands in ancient forests. And then I moved into California, and I was up in Humboldt County for the beginning of the campaign to stop the cutting of the last redwoods, a campaign that was successful in saving Headwaters Forest, which is now public land that was former private land that was slated for logging, and it's several hundred acres that's preserved in Humboldt County now. Meanwhile, back in the 80s and 90s, we were concerned about saving the forest and saving habitat and biodiversity. Since then, climate change has moved to the forefront, and we're realizing that saving habitat is not enough because climate change is also having impacts on habitat and on wildlife. One of the impacts is, of course, wildfires. So I wrote this song actually in the 1980s about a wildfire that happened in Humboldt, and a friend lost his homestead in Humboldt County. And since then I've continued to sing it, and each year it's gotten more and more relevant. It's called Wildfire Burning. There's a strange kind of haze over the sun. Somewhere something's burning, fire's got me on the run. Well, there's things I should be doing, should have already done. Kinds of things that you shouldn't shun. Things I'll never do now, I've left them half begun. Oh, it's all gone up in smoke, hold that fire line, someone. Wildfire burning, better run. Wildfire burning, turning the sky black. Wildfire burning, no turning it back. Wildfire burning, the flames rolling high. Wildfire burning, don't ask why. There's life is raging out of control. One minute I'm living high, the next I'm living on the dole. I was blazing with passion to reach my goal. I was the white hot ember that coyotes stole. Well, the firestorm's advancing, it's taking its toll. Oh, my heart just keeps smoldering like an angry coal. Wildfire burning in my soul. Wildfire burning, turning the sky black. Wildfire burning, no turning it back. Wildfire burning, flames rolling high. Wildfire burning, don't ask why. Lightning strike in the middle of a drought. Uncertainty flames into doubt like a careless match that you didn't crush out. Well, if you're taking things for granted, then you never did without. Oh, somewhere through the smoke I hear somebody shout. Won't somebody tell me what's this all about? Wildfire burning, look out. Wildfire burning, turning the sky black. Wildfire burning, no turning it back. Wildfire burning, flames rolling high. Wildfire burning, don't you ask why? Why? Wildfire burning, wildfire burning. Thank you. Thanks so much. So you can find me at mokaimusic.com, and the best way to support musicians these days is a place called Bandcamp, and my URL is mokai.bandcamp.com, and that's where I have my music for sale. I'm really trying not to promote the big Amazon and iTunes and Apple and all those. But you can find my music on Spotify, because in order to be heard, you have to be out there in all those services these days. I like to just lighten the mood a little bit. On my latest album, I have a recording of this song, an instrumental tune that I did. I have two different recordings out. One of my older albums, I have this solo version you'll hear, and on my more recent album, I have a full band version with a bass and an incredible mandolin player soloing on it. But anyway, here's the solo version. It's called Holy Guacamole.
Thank you so much, Mokai.
I think we should all unmute and give a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Mokai. It's
Thank you.
appreciated. Now, you're going to be performing this coming Tuesday at the Dutch Goose here in Menlo Park.
Yes.
I know it's a local establishment, but it's right next to Stanford. So we hope a few people from Stanford show up and hang out with us and increase our circle and increase our community and be able to invite them for pizza, comedy, and music. So it goes on from 6:30 till 8:30, and Mokai is going to be performing live, and you're going to get a chance to meet him in person. So if you can make it, that would be awesome. This year, Ethics in Tech has held 8 events, and one of them was an all-day event with Portland Privacy, Oakland Privacy, EFF, Stop Spying on Us, Veterans for Peace, Code Pink, and a number of other organizations. And we're really proud of the work that we're doing with very little, with very little support outside of the generous support of our donors and people that attend these events. So your $2 means a lot. Whatever you contributed for tonight's event means a lot to us. And we have a wonderful set of comedians coming up. Mokai, can we give these guys a chance to get a few minutes in, and we'll call it early tonight since one of our presenters, Matthew, didn't show up. So we will continue with the comedians. So who do we have up, Janet? Thank you, Mokai.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
You're amazing.
See you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
So next up in this amazing program we have tonight is Jason Mack. His comedy has been described as dark but silly, and it touches on subjects such as his disabilities, our universal fear of death, and dating. It doesn't sound fun, but he promises it is. So he's a 9-time disabled veteran, 5-time college dropout, which is really fun, and a 3-time performer at San Francisco Sketch Fest. The San Francisco Board of Supervisors awarded him a certificate of honor for his performances benefiting fellow veterans. He's performed in the Sacramento Comedy Festival and the World Series of Comedy. He also founded the popular showcase Real Live Comedians, which has run in San Francisco since 2013 and been featured across the West Coast. Take it away, Jason.
Thank you. Wow, that was great to hear my whole bio. Delivered way better than I ever would have. That's every embarrassing thing I've ever done that I really care about. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, thanks everybody for having me. Thanks Ethics in Tech. Thanks Vets in Tech, fellow veterans out there. I was in the Navy. I spent 4.5 years on the USS Should Have Gone to College, and went through some health issues after that. I have, I'll tell you guys what they are. I have PTSD. I have a traumatic brain injury. I have tinnitus from the war. I have an auditory processing disorder where I can't process speech out of the right side of my head. I have Hashimoto's disease where my immune system's attacking my thyroid. I have sleep apnea. I have fatty liver disease, and I've never torn off the right amount of aluminum foil. So that's cool. I started taking ketamine for my PTSD, like not street ketamine, but like a ketamine from a doctor in Florida, which is way worse. It's a way worse way to get ketamine. He can only deliver it to 3 states. It's a real thing. The reason I got into ketamine for PTSD was I read this study where a doctor or scientists gave rats ketamine, and these rats had PTSD, and after they did the ketamine, they had no visible PTSD anymore. And I thought that's incredible, but is it really ethical to send those rats to war in the first place? I I don't think so. Hope you guys are laughing. That's the fun of Zoom shows. So yeah, PTSD. A lot of people pull back when I say that, but I tell them it's not like the stabby or shooty kind, it's the Heidi kind, or the Heidi kind of PTSD. I know it looks like I'm on my way to bomb the Bay Bridge, but it's not. I only mean well. But a few years ago, I had all these undiagnosed issues, and doctors weren't listening to me. So I came up with this plan where I was going to go to my VA hospital and I was going to light myself on fire in the lawn of the VA hospital. But what happened is I looked it up, and it's been done before, like 5 or 6 times. So that's the story about how not wanting to be a hack saved my life. PTSD is just like totally irrational. Like the other day, I'm driving home and I had this like PTSD, like anxiety flare up because I saw my house and there were Christmas lights on my house. And I didn't put Christmas lights in my house. So my PTSD brain immediately came up with a scenario where not one, but 2 of my exes had gotten together to decorate my house out of spite. But it turns out I was just high on PCP, so no big deal. I don't know. Sometimes I don't know if I have low self-esteem or high self-awareness. That's not diagnosed though. That's just fun. I love service dogs. Big fan of service dogs. I love fake service dogs. That's how far my love for service dogs goes. Some people get mad when there's a fake service dog, and I don't understand. Like, where's your sense of joy? Like, there's a pug with a sweater in a Denny's. What is your problem here? I have a dog though. I have a black lab. Her name's the Feminist Agenda. It's fun, like at dog parks, when somebody goes, "Oh, what's her name?" And I say, "Oh, it's the Feminist Agenda." And then the conversation's over. So that's pretty neat. I call her Jen for short though. I'm not a monster. But a really cool thing that she does is, like, when I'm in a lot of pain, I'll have like anxiety and depression symptoms. And what'll happen is I'll bury my head in my hands like this. And my puppy will sense this from across the room. And then she'll run across the room and she'll jump up into my lap and give me puppy kisses all over my face. Isn't that so sweet, you guys? That's the sweetest thing about her. That's the sweetest thing about my adorable little puppy. The worst thing about her is that she's a Holocaust denier. Like, she doesn't claim it didn't happen. She's like, it was 6 million Jews, not 6.1. One of those really specific Holocaust denying Labrador retrievers. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? You guys have had dogs before, right? But I can't do anything about it, right? Like I can't hit her. She's not a kid, right? So I just kind of go on doing what we're all doing, which is loving someone who's a bigot. Is that too close to Thanksgiving for that? Yeah, so I don't know if you guys, I have tech concerns. I feel like it knows too much. Like, I saw this ad the other day for a military veteran with debilitating chronic pain who's a big fan of Led Zeppelin University. Get out of my head, Is that relatable? Hey, all my movements are tracked by satellites. Anyone else? I have invisible disabilities. That's a thing people call it. A lot of people tell me I don't look disabled. And then I'm like, is that supposed to make me feel better? Like, because it does, but I know it shouldn't. So now I'm in this weird position where I'm like, thank you for your bigotry. I had all those undiagnosed health issues. It got really bad. I ended up designing my own 12-step program to aid my recovery from all my health issues, and it didn't go well. What happened is I ended up in a regular 12-step program. I went to some AA meetings, or as I like to call it, joining the family business. I flew on a spy plane in the Navy. And one thing, I have a qualm. One thing I don't like is about the way that the military is portrayed in the media. If you guys think about like the movie Top Gun, the way that call signs are, like everyone has a cool call sign, like Maverick, Iceman, something that they clearly made up themselves just to sound really cool. But that's not the way call signs work in military aviation. What happens, the way you get a call sign is you do something embarrassing in a foreign country. Like a friend of mine threw up all over a cab in Spain. So we called him Cuervo because he had been drinking tequila that night. That's a call sign. Or like my call sign, another example is paid for a Sicilian woman's abortion. That's it was the gentlemanly thing to do. I have family in here and they're disgusted. My McDonald's, my local McDonald's started playing bagpipe music over the PA system outside. It's to deter homeless people from hanging out. So they play really loud bagpipes over the PA, and it works because it's so annoying. Nobody hangs out there except their big problem now, which is loitering Scots. Bunch of loitering Scots hanging around my McDonald's. All right. Baby throwing class. You guys know about this? I don't know if you guys have babies, but you can teach them how to swim, but they kind of already know how to swim. So they have these classes that are just like, okay, think about a baby. It spends 9 months in the mother, submerged in water. So it makes sense, right? That like theoretically it would just be able to swim. And that's the way it works. People just go to these classes and they throw a baby in a pool and the baby just knows what to do. It just pops right up. Babies are surprisingly buoyant. That's what I'm saying. But like somebody had to figure this out, right? Like they had like, and I don't know if they started high. You started like chucking 14-year-olds into a gorge, or if they started low. I don't want to think about that. Yeah, I feel bad for the lifeguard though. Hey Sam, can you come down to the gorge? I have a theory.
Yeah, let's keep it away from the poor babies. I appreciate that, but I think that poor babies get a bad rap, especially this day and age. So they got to get all the love and attention we can give them. But I really appreciate your comedy. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I know we have Kathy Azejo coming up next. Would love to have Kathy jump on. So,
But not before I introduce Kathy.
oh, thank you, Janet.
So thank you, Jason. I laughed hard, even though you couldn't hear me. And I'm looking forward to laughing hard to Kathy. And I'm so sorry. I think I'm going to mispronounce your last name, your family name, Zhao.
Zhao.
Okay.
Close. Zhao.
Zhao.
Good job.
Is a stand-up comedian and a sit-down entrepreneur based in San Francisco. Growing up in China, her English pronunciations and improper word usage have brought laughter and embarrassment to many people, herself included. Her unique, ridiculous perspective of American culture and her brutal honesty about Asian immigrants' lives also earned her the title of insult comic. She co-founded a nonprofit organization, Laugh It Out, to empower promising teenagers with humor through stand-up comedy and improvisation. Kathy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So before I start my bullshit, please unmute yourself. You know, it is human rights to hear your laughter. And it is not right, to let a comic hear your laughters whenever I tell a joke or, something else. So yeah, so if you can unmute yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, Jason, can you unmute?
Thank you so much. Yeah. I know, I love to hear your laughter. That's so important to us, right? Because it's a human rights day. We need to hear this, right? So hello, everyone. This is Cassie Zhao. How's your Friday going?
Pretty great.
Better now.
Woo!
You think I really care? I'm kidding. You know, I'm working in tech too. So I manage the whole marketing team in a tech company. People call it non-tech in tech. I don't like that name. I don't. No, non-tech in tech. It sounds like I am the impossible burger among all beef burgers. But my price is only 1/3 of those beef burgers. Well, actually, before I did marketing in tech, I was a journalist. Yes, they called me technology journalist in San Francisco. Actually, I didn't know anything about either technology or journalism. Yeah, none of them was my major. But that's just like once you move into San Francisco, you will find everything's name has to be changed. Like finance companies in the Bay Area are called fintech. Education companies are called edtech. Like healthy food companies are called Impossible Burgers. Well, also, you can always get some fancy names about our jobs if you move to San Francisco. If you are employed but without pay, people call you entrepreneur, and long-time employed without pay, serial entrepreneur. And if you are a loan shark, people call you venture capital. Yeah, and if you are doing some Ponzi scheme, good luck with your cryptocurrency. You know that just like the sing songs, right? You know, if you're going to San Francisco, be sure to change your name before you arrive. If you're going to San Francisco, you're gonna meet some weird people there. Yeah, so be careful before you move to San Francisco. So, you know, today is Human Rights Day. You know, I feel I'm deprived of some of my human rights when I moved to San Francisco. Like, cause I moved into a super tiny bedroom. Like, how tiny is it? Let's see, Jason, if you and your partner move into my bedroom, you can have 2 positions at night. Only 2, yeah. So I'm wondering who made such tiny bedrooms? Office of Family Planning of San Francisco? Like to control the population of San Francisco? Well, if they really want to control the population, they should hire me because I am a triple threat on our Highway 101. Asian, female, no license. You know, whenever I drive, I have to pray to God. Like, oh my Lord, oh my Lord, oh my Lord, please bless the drivers around me. Yeah, but I don't think I'm the worst driver. I am not the worst driver. You know who are the worst drivers? The guys who modify their engines to make noise. Like, zzz. Hey, dude, what are you doing? You can't make your girlfriend loud at night, so you make your car loud? Stupid. Well, maybe I'm not the best driver, but I'm very good at parking. Yeah, there are 3 ways of parking. parallel parking, perpendicular parking, and my parking, aka illegal parking. Yeah, so I really don't get it why people say, oh, it's so hard to park in San Francisco. Are you blind? Are you blind? Don't you see those little parking signs, those red, yellow ones? What do you call them? The fire hydrants. Yeah, the fire hydrants. I park there every time because there's always an empty spot right next to it, right? There's no other car compete with me except for the fire engine. Yeah, that's how I park tonight. You know, so today, it's a Human Rights Day, right? So I believe that everyone has a right to be respected. And two, I went on a date with a proud boy. Yeah, well, you're like, why is he so proud? Because he has a white face, 2 blue eyes, and a red neck. Patriotic red, white, blue. Yeah, that's why he's so proud. But then I find out that my mom, who's living in China right now, has something in common with Proud Boys. They both wanted me to go back to China. Go back to China. They yell at me everywhere. So I don't mind, just buy me a flight. But both of them are so broke. My mom really wants me to go back to China because I'm the only child in our family. Thanks to the one-child policy in China, my mom only has one child to torture at home. But actually, like my mom and I now, we are in a very healthy relationship. We haven't seen each other for 5 years. That's how we can keep our relationship healthy. Actually, I wanted to go back to China when I started school in Boston 10 years ago. My English really sucked. I couldn't pronounce a lot of English words. But my mom told me, speak your own damn English, let Americans suffer. So thank you all for your suffering tonight.
Thank you so much. We'll be happy to suffer anytime and get you on back with our events. So please plan to be with us in 2022. And oops, I forgot to start my video. I'm talking without it. But yeah, so thank you so much. And I just want to say thanks for Janet. Thanks for all the speakers, the comedians, the musician, Mokai. These kinds of events are only possible with your help and support. And as I've mentioned, we are a nonprofit. We don't have any corporate sponsors. So whatever you can contribute, we would be greatly appreciative. We were going to have our next event on December 14th here in Menlo Park in person. And then starting off next year, with a whole set of new presenters, speakers, comedians, and musicians. So looking forward to continuing to provide these events to you. Have a wonderful, happy holidays if I don't talk to you. And thanks to everyone who participated in tonight's event. Take care.